What's up, everybody? Welcome to Don't Give Up with Jacob. Today, I have a special guest joining me on my show. Not only that, but he's also a school social worker, a therapist in private practice, host of the Mental Health Podcast, mental health advisor, a nonprofit dedicated to connecting young people with mental health challenges to emotional support animals, a father, a lacrosse player, coach, and a fantasy football enthusiast. So it is my pleasure to welcome to my show Daniel Majler.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yep, I'm excited to have you as well. Welcome to my show.
Yeah. Well, again, I really appreciate this opportunity to get to know you and your audience and to share a little bit about my life and Paws for Patrick, which is an organization that I'm really proud to be a part of.
All right, so got a lot of questions to ask you about your life. Sounds
Okay.
good?
Yep.
Okay, so first off, a lot of us feel more comfortable with animals than people sometimes.
Yeah. I would say that's very common for, everybody, whether your people are neurodivergent or anyone. Animals, they never are judgmental. They don't care what you look like, they don't care what you sound like. They just love you. And if you give them love, care, and affection, they're going to return that. And they're never tricky. You know exactly what they're thinking and they're feeling. They don't have a separate agenda. So when we're with an animal, especially dogs, they have this incredible empathy and they can tell if we're feeling down and bad, and they just want to be with us. And so we can also open up to our dog, to our cat, to our chinchilla, and we know it's never going to share our secrets with anybody. So sometimes it can be easier to talk to our animal and get some of our feelings out than it could be to talk to even the best therapist.
Wow, definitely sounds interesting. So, what are some ways that animals can help neurodiverse people in ways that people sometimes can't?
Well, again, a lot of times a typical person can lose patience for a person with neurodiversity because they have an expectation that the person will speak in a quick manner and will respond really quickly. Whereas the animals have so much more patience. And the animal just responds to the needs of the neurodiverse person without any kind of expectations. They just respond to what they're seeing. And so that can help the neurodiverse person to just feel not rushed and not judged. So for a lot of the people I know who have autism spectrum related disorders or anything else, just they can feel like people are tired of waiting for their response. In addition, animals are usually not asking for eye contact. And so sometimes we can have a really comfortable experience when we're next to an animal. I've found for a lot of my students that I work with, if they're stroking an animal, it can be easier for them to talk to me as their therapist because their hands have something that they can do and they are not, again, they can look down at the animal instead of being expected to make eye contact.
Wow, sounds interesting. I think those are some great ways that animals can help neurodiverse people. And I also remember I had a therapy dog who would come to my classroom back when I was in elementary school, and we would read books to the therapy dog. And I also have a therapy dog of my own, and her name is Mia.
Yeah, so you know firsthand that an emotional support animal, like an animal that lives with a person, and it could just be helpful to deal with those feelings of anxiety, or if a person ever has feelings of loneliness. And the nice thing about an emotional support animal that lives with you is if you're having a bad day and it's 10 o'clock at night, they're there, whereas your therapist has gone to bed. So you can you can interact with your emotional support animal whenever you really need them.
Wow, sounds interesting. And I also heard that you were the host of a mental health podcast known as Not Allowed to Die.
Yeah. Not Allowed to Die is a podcast about mental health from the therapist perspective. So, what I do on my podcast is I talk about dilemmas that I'm seeing in my practice. And so many times people have said to me, you should write a book about the experiences that I've had talking to clients. And in my experience, a lot of people don't like to read as much nowadays, but they do like to listen. So, when they might be driving in their car or going somewhere, they can hear about mental health and think, what might my therapist be thinking in a situation if I'm going to share something with them that's really private? And so people write in with questions, or I talk about dilemmas that I'm seeing. In addition, sometimes I have guests on. The reason the podcast is called Not Allowed to Die is because in my private practice, that's the only rule that I have for my clients is you can do whatever it takes to get you through this world. You're just not allowed to die.
Wow, definitely sounds like a very, very awesome thing. So I'm going to ask you, what inspired you to start your podcast, Not Allowed to Die?
Well, the same thing that inspired the podcast was also what inspired me to get involved with Paws for Patrick. Patrick Romer was one of my students, and in May of 2020, he died by suicide. And that really affected me quite a bit. And it made me want to do more to give back. Now, fortunately, Patrick's parents and family are incredible people, and they decided to start the nonprofit Paws for Patrick to get ESAs to people. So if there are people who are 30 and younger who might benefit from having an emotional support animal, they can go to pawsforpatrick.org. And if they want help adopting an animal, Paws for Patrick will help reimburse them for their adoption fees if they adopt from a shelter. And if they need an ESA letter so they can live in no pet housing, Paws for Patrick will connect them with a therapist, and Paws for Patrick will pay for the therapist so that they can get that letter. So being involved with Paws for Patrick really helped me to heal from the loss of Patrick, but I also wanted to share some of the wisdom and the experiences that I'd had with a larger audience. So that made me want to start the podcast. So I could just give back a little bit more. And again, we can never really truly be able to prevent all suicides, but the more we promote positive things about mental health and reducing the stigma of talking about mental health, like the things you're doing on your podcast, the less people will feel alone. And the more that we can connect with each other, the better we can make everybody's mental health.
Yeah, it's really good to get everybody connected and feeling great rather than just letting them be alone and by themselves without any help.
That's correct. Yeah, you and I are aligned on that for sure.
Yeah, and I know that getting an emotional support animal letter can feel confusing and stressful, especially for teens and our families.
Yeah. So a lot of families have a number of questions about will I qualify for an emotional support animal? Like what are the steps? So generally, you just have to go to any therapist and you can say to them, "Can you provide documentation that I have a mental health disability?" And many disabilities automatically qualify. So if a person has anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, OCD, PTSD, autism, anything like that, they would automatically qualify. So it's not expected to be a high bar. And then when they have an emotional support animal letter written by their therapist, just verifying that they have this disability, they're if they live in an apartment, they can't be charged pet fees and they can't be charged a pet deposit, which is really nice for people. And again, they just share that letter with their landlord, and it's a really simple process.